So, I've been making a board game, and after making a prototype and then jazzing up that prototype, we playtested the game with our family and friends. Now, we got some great feedback, but also got given a lot of ideas of what we could add or change. The only problem with getting so much feedback? What do you do with it all? And where do you even begin? Hi, my name's Gab, and this is Gathering Grounds, a board game where players must forage, scavenge, and craft items in order to survive. Its whole premise inspired by a simple idea. From picking a berry or a leaf or a mushroom out in the wild, do you really know what you're eating? So my husband and I have been turning that idea into a competitive tabletop game, gathering feedback early from our family and friends, to see how the game plays with more than just two people, to help make our changes around new mechanics and balancing values. When it comes to gathering that feedback and then using it to balance or improve your game, it's very important to dig into the why people are making these suggestions. Before we go any further though, let me quickly summarize the rules of Gathering Grounds. The player has health and hunger, similar to Minecraft, and during their turn they can pick up and perform the following hunger actions: foraging for food, scavenging for scrap, and crafting items with that scrap. These are called hunger actions, as the player must spend one hunger in order to pick up a card of their choice. What's the problem with expending your hunger though? You get hungry. And what happens if your hunger depletes to 0? Well, you then must spend your health to perform those actions. And if your health reaches 0, then you are out of the game. So after performing 2 hunger actions during a turn, the player can then choose to eat food that they foraged and play cards from their hand. Now, eating is where things get interesting. Say this player has a fruit and a root in their basket, and they choose to eat the fruit. They then must roll to see what effect the fruit will have on them. That's right, eating doesn't guarantee your survival. Just like picking and eating a berry in the wild doesn't guarantee that you won't live to regret it later. This player rolled a 1, meaning that they gained hunger. Hooray! But say they rolled a 4, this means that they lose hunger. And looking at this value table, we can see that each food type has its own level of risk when it comes to eating it, which will affect what food players choose to eat first, and which food to save for last. And it's not just the food that the players need to worry about. The other players in the game are hostile. The win condition being that you are the last player standing. And there are items that they can craft using scrap in order to carry out their nefarious means. That is, if the food doesn't finish you off first. Now that we know the gist and the high-level rules of the game, let's get back to those tips on analysing our feedback. We've been working in the video games industry for 7 years now. I've learnt the importance of gathering feedback early to help gauge player sentiment in order to drive iteration, and also not always taking that feedback at face value. With version 0.3 of Gathering Grounds, we got to playtest with 6 people. Not only to see if the game fell apart with more players, but also to see if it was any fun. And what we found was that players did have a lot of fun, and really seemed to be engaged with the gameplay and the actions that they could take. How do I know this? Well, a very important part of playtesting is actually just in observing how your players are reacting to your game. Are they smiling? Are they laughing? Do they get frustrated and retaliate when they get repeatedly attacked by their older brother? All of these things, from the comments that your players are making to how they're responding to the game, are all things to watch out for and note down. And try to remember these exchanges when making the changes to your game. One of the things that I noticed as well when we playtested were that players were really invested at the beginning of the game. And then their engagement seemed to drop off at some point. Conversations starting to veer from the gameplay itself to ideas on what we could do to improve the game. The biggest feedback that we had to note was that players wanted more violence. These ideas ranging from adding new items to the game that could deal damage like poison or even bombs, less scanning, more sword, and a player even suggesting that we add punching to the game. Now, why would all of the players be focusing their feedback on damaging other players? Well, let's look at this punching idea. A player suggested that we add in a new hunger action where players can choose to punch another player to deal them 1 damage. I mean, looking at this feedback at face value, it does seem like a fun change. That could add some interesting interactivity between players and add more variety to the choices that they need to make. But would it really solve that problem that I was seeing of player disengagement? Would it add anything to the game? Or just be a new unnecessary mechanic that we added because we didn't dive deeper into the meaning of their feedback? Which brings us back to the question, why are all players wanting to increase the violence of the game? Do they feel like they aren't given enough opportunity to initiate attacks between other players? Or fight back if they themselves are attacked? Are these players just psychopaths? Wait, I played with my family. Is my family trying to murder me? All of this might be true, but rather than just noting down this feedback and calling it a day there, I asked them a simple question. Why would you like to add punching to the game? And their answer was simple. The game goes on for too long. And this one question opened up for others in the group to agree with this sentiment as well. So it wasn't just a case of people wanting to inflict more violence on each other. All of these suggestions were rooted with the idea that players wanted a game with higher action and a faster pace. So always make sure to be curious as to the why players are suggesting what they are suggesting, and try to find the root of their suggestions before just jumping on their really cool ideas. This then allowed my husband and I to concentrate on this issue when we were thinking about the action items for the next iteration. Thinking about how long the play sessions were, not just with 6 players, but also when we played just us 2, we agreed that they were too long, making actions seem repetitive and therefore lowering player engagement. So we came up with a focus to help us make our changes. That focus being optimal playtime. Having a focus like this means that we can move forward with always having this goal in mind, reducing the average playtime from 40 minutes or even more to 10 to 15 minutes. Now, I know this seems crazy. 40 minutes to 15 minutes is a huge jump, but that's the beauty and I guess the curse when it comes to balancing a game. Changes, even small and simple ones, can make a huge impact on the gameplay itself. So I got to developing a changelog for us to test for our next version. We definitely heard their feedback to up the violence, and agreed that doing this would help with the play session time. More violence, meaning more eliminations, meaning a winner would prevail sooner. So the first thing to try was with the weapons. We wanted to try removing the 1 damage weapons and replace them fully with the 2 damage weapons. Choosing to buff this card meant that it reduced the power of lower level shields, so that attacks are less likely to be negated, but also just adding more higher level damage of weapons as a whole to the deck, increasing the size of the craft deck and your chance of picking up something that can deal damage. We then also wanted to try halving the amount of scan cards that are in the deck, so that players feel like they're picking up a more variety of things, allowing them to find cards like medicine, shields, and even the steel card. Now, unfortunately, we're not going to add punching to this iteration. But I always like to keep a file of back pocket changes, which is basically a list of fun ideas either we come up with or players come up with, that you can then go back and look at if you want to revise things later. So instead of adding a new type of hunger action, we instead added a poking stick to the scavenge deck. So players have a chance to pick up low-level damage items without the need to craft them. And besides some adjustments to some food effect cards that weren't adding much to the game, we not only added a new card, but came up with a new mechanic to go along with it that would add a whole new element to the game: poison. Now, I know what you're thinking. Poison, isn't that just a rethemed weapon? You craft a poison, you play it from your hand, bada bing, bada boom, you deal some damage to someone. Wrong! Another problem that I've been trying to solve is with scanning food. The scan food item gives players the ability to reveal the values of a food card in their basket before eating it. One thing I noticed here was that most players would use their scanned foods on the riskier foods, like roots and fungi. But if they scanned it and it was bad, they would then either just ignore it the whole time, or we would just tell them, yeah, you can just discard that bad food. So I thought a bit more about this idea of a poison card, to do something to make poison a bit more interesting. To not only reduce the playtime by increasing the violence, but also giving meaning to those scanned foods that are bad. So, poison. How will it work? In order to play a poison card, the player must choose a food from their basket to pair it with. So yes, players do have the ability to just play a poison card, but why would players want to risk removing a food from their basket just to deplete a measly 2 health? The catch here is, any scanned effects on this food card get stacked onto the poison card. And on top of this, it has a food effect attributed to it, such as the La Bomba. then the player being poisoned must follow what the food effect card states immediately, as well as decreasing their health by 2. This new card made me really excited and really confident that players not only would be inflicting more damage upon each other, and therefore reaching a win condition sooner, but also that it would give meaning to an otherwise redundant mechanic of the game. So concepting some fun art for these new cards. Yes, that is a hat that the stick is wearing. I got to updating our printed prototype.
But before committing to these changes, we're going to make some slight variations to the prototype version we have already. Mainly to save me from printing and cutting out more things that we might not even use. So the first thing we need to do is half the scan cards. But instead of just chucking away the 12 scanned food cards that I have, we're going to just rewrite on them for Ollie and I to playtest tonight. What will the scanned foods become? We're going to add the new weapon type, Poison, and see how that actually plays in game.
Oh, I'm on my Devlog. I'm gonna attack you -2.
Shield.
With the weapons themselves, we're actually going to try getting rid of the single damage weapons and instead replace them with the double damage weapons. The forage deck currently is in a good, stable condition. I have a fun idea of how to change the player cards, but again, just gonna leave them as is for now because they do the trick. Now, the balancing of the actual food values, I could change these, and part of me really wants to get rid of the values where it says 0 because it doesn't really add anything to the game. It's sort of like a redundant term. So I might have a rethink of how to balance this. The food effects. I had an idea to add exploding food into the game so that not only are we adding more ways to damage each other, but also with that explosion, you're adding more chaos because it will explode the people next to you. So I've replaced 2 of the food effects, which we playtested with and didn't really get much out of them. So I have to find those 2 in here and rewrite them. Now, we don't just have changes to the craft pile, but we also have changes to the scavenge pile. We're going to add little poke cards to the deck. So yeah, I guess I'll get to that and we'll see how it goes when we playtest with Ollie tonight.
Pen sucks!
So we have the game set up and we're gonna time how long play session takes to see if our changes have improved it. So the playtime has gone from an average of like 40 minutes to 8. Changes successful.
So there you have it, how we fixed and balanced the playtime of our game. I hope that you got some valuable insight and tips as well on how you could go about improving and balancing your games as well. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like or comment down below. Our next plans are definitely to playtest these changes again with more people, which maybe I'll see if I can capture footage of a cheeky playtest session for you guys, so you can see how this game really plays. But also, I think there's a bit of work to be done on the overall story and theming of the cards to make the game feel a bit more cohesive. Though I do like the idea of aliens wielding swords and shields as if they're in medieval times.
Your mother was a hamster and your father smelt of elderberries.
Is there someone else up there we can talk to?
It doesn't really make for immersive gameplay. Regardless, we are having a lot of fun making this game and sharing it with you guys. Especially with a baby on the way. Making something that maybe one day we could pick up and play together as a family. Telling him that we made it while I was pregnant with him is something really awesome to think about. If you are enjoying the journey or want to check out any of my other videos, make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss the next one. And remember, don't be afraid to ask why.